right. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for one of our Conversations on Leadership and Equity series from YW Boston. My name is Adriana Rains. I am also a LeadBoston alum and currently the engagement manager at YW Boston. Conversations on Leadership and Equity is a series that we started this year, and it features a candid conversation with a distinguished LeadBoston alum, providing us some valuable perspectives on leadership, equity, and social change. Our guests will share their personal stories, discuss some of their work, and tell us a little bit about how the LeadBoston program has shaped or influenced their leadership journey. This series gives us an opportunity to connect, and inspire, and empower one another to drive positive change in our communities and beyond. Before we get started, just a few technical stuff. Like I said, the session will be recorded. If you would like to opt out, just please turn your camera off. Keep your mic muted. Feel free to use all the emojis that you like. I love emojis. If you lose connection, just come back in and I will let you in and sit back and relax. So today we are thrilled to be in community with the distinguished Michael J. Bobbitt. Welcome, Michael. Thank you so much for making time in your busy schedule to be here. In a minute, I'm going to hand the mic over to you. But before we start, I was telling Michael that I do flashcards for these series to get some key points about the LeadBoston alums, path and what they've accomplished and what they do. And I'm up to 5 cards with Michael. So I'm not going to read all of them out loud to you, but I'm sure you all know, Michael is the executive director for the Mass Cultural Council. I believe he's been there for something over 3 years. He's also a TEDx speaker, which I just found this out yesterday, so I'm going to be looking for those. A playwright, and he's on Governor Healey's Advisory Council for Black Empowerment. He has been received award for being the most influential man of color by Get Connected, Boston's Business Journey 2023 50 Power Movement Makers, inducted to the College of Fellows of the American Theater, Excel Leadership Award, Mass Opera's Action Bearing Award, and the Origination Cultural Arts Center Sojourners Award. And I'm going to stop there because we will talk about the amazing work that he's doing at Mass Cultural Center when we get to the questions. But I am going to pass it over to you, Michael, so you can just introduce yourself and say a few words before we start with the questions.
Hey, Adriana, it's good to see you. How is my hair, by the way? I appreciate you sending over the glam squad to make all this look good. So
yeah, it looks good. It looks
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah,
Thank
especially
you.
on the right side, which is like the side that you favor.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's good to see so many of my classmates in the room. I miss you all. I miss our time at LeadBoston together. But anyway, my name is Michael Bobbitt. I'm the executive director of Mass Cultural Council. If you don't know Mass Cultural Council, we are your state agency supporting the creative sector. That's arts, humanities, interpretive sciences. And we do that through a lot of things. One is advocacy and policy work, relationship building across all of state government and the private sector. And then 2, we do some grant making. Recently, we've been really focused more on the policy and the relationship building work because I believe that arts touches all parts of life, and many of the things that you're all working on, the arts can help with, or the arts is also challenged with. So I'm kind of excited about this conversation. We've made some great strides in our equity, diversity, and inclusion work, and I'm happy to share with you all some of what we've done.
Yes, thank you so much, Michael, for that, and thank you for that information on how your the Mass Cultural Council, it's its place within in Massachusetts. the importance of arts. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about everything you have achieved. But before we get to that, Michael, I wanted to find out what led you to this particular role and why.
It's sort of a long journey. The arts kind of found me. My first sort of foray into the arts was in the first grade when I was Hansel in the third act of Hansel and Gretel. My mom says I was the best Hansel, but she has no biases. Something happened in performance, and I don't remember the rehearsal. I don't remember anything about it. I just remember this one moment in performance where I said something and the whole audience laughed. Even my sort of the other actors, the other first grader who was playing Gretel, and the person, I think she was in sixth grade, playing the witch, they were even laughing. And something in me just snapped. It made all the sort of dark things go away, and my body was just filled with joy. And so I like to tell people it saved me, because I grew up in the 80s and the 90s in DC when there was this war on drugs, and every single adult male in my life was incarcerated. Every single adult in my life was dealing with joblessness, with mental health issues, incarceration, addictions. And the arts was that one thing that made all of that go away, whether or not it was art class or music class or after school ceramics or dance or theater. It just made it all go away. And it also made me realize that the world was bigger than this sort of 1 mile radius of my home. And so it grabbed me, it held me, it felt like a calling. And I didn't know I was pursuing it. I just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And then when it was time in high school to pick a college to go to, the arts was what I did the best. I was a trumpeter. I started playing the trumpet in the third grade. I kept doing it. In high school, I was a member of the National Symphony Orchestra's Youth Fellowship Program. And so when I went to college, I got a scholarship for trumpet and academics. And so I pursued a career as a trumpeter. I left that because it wasn't right for me and it wasn't the right fit. The next best thing I did was dance. So I pursued dance and trained as a concert dancer, and then eventually moved over to musical theater. And most of my adult life, I worked in musical theater, touring the country with Broadway shows and doing regional theater, eventually teaching and choreographing and directing. And that moved me into theater management. And where I sort of worked in administration was in the DC area. And one, because I never finished college, I kept pursuing professional development opportunities, and learning everything I can. I had great mentors, great workshops, great semester-long courses or year-long courses to learn everything I could learn about running a nonprofit arts organization. And then I don't know if it's because of the close proximity to DC and the federal government, but the arts sector was extremely engaged in what was happening advocacy-wise. So I built relationships with Congress people, with our state senators and state reps and delegates, and also the county electeds, super involved, got on a couple of boards that were advocacy boards. And so I was learning this job like 10, 15 years ago in the DC area. I actually moved to Massachusetts to run a theater. And about a year and a half after running that theater, I got a call from the search firm that was looking for the new ED for Mass Cultural Council. And my first reaction was, no, I just want to make plays for the rest of my life. I didn't want to get into grant making or sort of the public sector. And we talked and we went to lunch, the search firm, and I went through the interview process with Mass Cultural Council and fell in love with the staff and the work they were doing, and thought, yeah, I think I can do this job, and I think I see what it could be. And so I said yes. And 3.5 years later, I'm having a blast, and I think we're having a big impact. So I'm really excited about the job and where we're going next.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that with us. What an adventure. And what a blessing to find that expanded view of life and the world at such a young age when you were Hansel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting because I think that's the story I tell myself as I reflect on it. I
Yes.
just know that at the moment, in that moment, it was more fun to be in after school play practice than it was to be at home. And I think about that. I've actually become really obsessed with all the other little Michael Bobbitts out there that may have a dark and difficult home, a dysfunctional home that could also be saved by participating in the arts. And even if they don't go in the arts, their minds are expanded to the creative process and worlds beyond whatever difficulty they're going through. So it's great. And I still do practice as an artist, not full time. I have a few plays I'm working on. I'm adapting the song Monster Mash into a
Yes.
musical, and just got a commission to adapt Our Gang, which is the precursor to the Little Rascals,
Yes.
into a musical. And also I'll have a premiere in the fall of a new adaptation of Mother Goose rhymes that I've made into this sort of farcical little piece. So I'm excited about being able to continue writing plays.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. You found, it's interesting that you say you combined or brought in, that it's not just about what art has done for you, but recognizing that for so many other people, it might be something that will click with them, that they don't even know that that's there. And because if you think about it, I think before we started, one of the alums here said, about the arts, and it's interesting that you're growing the program so much when we're in such challenging financial times. So I really like how you are connecting, the arts to be something that can enhance, a person, an individual, who a community, a neighborhood. And we have for a long time not really, I feel, given art the seat that it deserves.
Yeah, I mean, so art can serve the aesthetic purpose, and it also
Yes.
can serve a practical purpose. And sometimes those things can mix and mingle. I see my friend Mo in the room, and I would consider him an artist as an architect. He's
Yes.
thinking about the practical use and marrying it with
Yes.
architecture. And I mean, just for example, in Massachusetts, the creative sector is a $28.6 billion industry. That's massive. That's 3 times the size of transportation and larger than construction and on par with retail. In the federal government, it's a $1.1 trillion industry. And one of our nation's biggest exports is the arts, right? It's
Yes.
larger than retail and utilities and construction and agriculture. It's a massive, massive, massive sector. And beyond the overall benefit of the arts is that it expands people's minds to creativity. And I don't think we'd have any advances in the world if it wasn't for people's creative minds. Like we wouldn't have advances in AI or biotech or STEM or science. And I think about what we need to fix this climate issue and what we need to fix politics right now. It's all about creativity. The World Economic Forum and Forbes just came out with a survey listing creative thinking as the #1 skill set needed by the workforce, by anyone in the workforce, not just people in the arts, but every workforce. And so if we think about the arts as a way for all of us to gain more hard or soft skills, however you want to call it, the value is in creativity. And I think every single school kid should have to do it. I think the professional workforce should all think about creativity and creative practice and proximity and consumption as a professional development tool. And everyone on your workforce should have some experiences in the arts every year, because that's how you're going to continue growing your company and growing your business and solving problems. It supports education, it supports health. I mean, the value of the arts are beyond anything that we can all imagine.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you, and I'm sure some of us on the call also agree. And again, you did the same thing where you connected two things, by bringing Mo's work into the conversation. Um, Creativity, everything that we see now that exists is because somebody thought about it first, or they saw a need for something, and they use their creative mind to figure out how do we meet that need, whether it's a building, whether it's just a table in your house. Everything came from somebody's thinking. And nurturing that creativity is so important, I think, from a young age.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, talent may be something that everyone doesn't have, and maybe talent is relative to what the person likes that's receiving the person's talent.
Yes.
But creativity is something that can actually absolutely be taught,
Yes.
be taught and fine-tuned and nurtured. And so that's kind of my goal when I think about how Mass Cultural Council can work within the state government and the Commonwealth. It is infusing everything that we do with creativity and showing that we have this massive sector that we're going to have this report coming out in November that's showing how large it is, very, very large. I was reading a number today in the paper. I forget which article it was in, but it said biotech employs 117,000 people. We have twice that, if not more.
In the arts.
In the arts, yes.
Wow. See, I would not have known that if I had not spoken to you today.
Well,
So
for every one ticket sold to sporting events, 5 are sold to arts events.
Arts events, yeah. So people are finding so much, in the arts, and having that availability to just go somewhere and see something different. And for that time, at least, not be thinking about everything that's going on in our lives, in the world, in our street. Yeah. So
or seeing art that actually makes us think more critically about the things that are happening in our lives, or seeing it from a different person's perspective. Yes. So, art is also inherently a social justice tool. So I can't think of any social justice movement in the history of America or the history of the world that didn't include arts and culture.
Yes.
The civil right, the songs of the civil rights movement, the work of Keith Haring and Larry Kramer and Terrence McNally, and the film Philadelphia during the AIDS crisis.
Yes.
I mean, it's just built in. So
yes,
has many values.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. And that yeah, somebody asked about the arts rehab project. We're gonna talk about that. Yeah, but following on that thread that you started, let me ask you this: how has, if it has, going through the LeadBoston program influenced your approach to advancing racial and gender and equity at Mass Arts?
Yeah, there are a couple of things. One is I've had about 10 years of racial equity training, formal and informal, and experience. I consider myself somewhat, I wouldn't say expert. I have some skill in understanding sort of DEIA, and actually I've done a lot of consulting for a lot of organizations. I think what LeadBoston did for me the best was, you all can probably understand this, but when you work in one industry, you get so singularly focused. You tend to self-segregate and focus mostly on that sector. LeadBoston, beyond the exposure to the different issue-based days that we have, we were able to, one, step into, in a very visceral way, step into the world of other sectors and learn deeply about their challenges and their accomplishments, but also be in a room with our classmates that were coming from all over, so many different sectors, and hear their perspective on the thing we were learning, and then through my own lens as an arts person. And so it reminded me, two things. It reminded me that creativity can support and help and is affected by all these different things that we learned in LeadBoston. But two, it reminded me that part of what I have to do, and part of what the creative sector has to do, is to be in rooms with other people so that they get to know us, so that we get to know them, so that if they have a challenge, we can show them how we can support them. And also to show them that, again, these challenges can be conquered through creative thinking and collaboration across different sectors. So that's one thing. The other thing too is that we were I kind of believe very strongly that DEIA and all the things that we were working on, these are all acts of love. We're really trying to show those people who have been oppressed or marginalized love. And it may be the first time they're being loved by people in this country. So that's one thing, and I hold on to that. And so at Mass Cultural Council, when I got there, the organization had done some work in DEIA. And one of the things I want to do is sort of disaggregate the work a little bit. Because I think one of the mistakes we tend to make, and this is my own personal thought, is that we tend to try to deal with all of the oppressive issues in one category. And we call it DEIA, JB, and all these other letters get attached to it. And I kind of wanted to separate it. So we worked on a racial equity plan.
Yes.
We focused on racism. We brought in experts to help us. We did a lot of learning. We built out a plan that had action steps and measurables and a timeline attached to it. It's not that we didn't address other issues, sort of like disability and our Native American community and other sectors that might need support, but we wanted to focus on racial equity because I kind of think that racism is the blueprint for all the other oppressions. And so if you can get your team to really focus on racial equity, you're going to have a blueprint for the other different plans you can have. So instead of having one big monster plan, we decided to have a suite of plans using the template we made in racial equity. So we just launched our D-Deaf and Disability Equity and Access Plan. We also launched our Native American and Indigenous Equity Plan. We have plans for a Rural Equity Plan and plans for a Citizenship Equity Plan. All these things require some expertise. The acts of love that we have to accomplish in those plans will need to dig in deep with those communities to find out what their needs are, learn ourselves, and then build a plan. The other thing too, it reminded me, and there's so much about your leadership goals in LeadBoston. So it reminded me to plan for things that you want to accomplish and then work with your friends and your colleagues to accomplish it. And so as I was in the room listening, some new ideas were popping up. Some new things were popping up, and we actually added some things to our some of our plans. The other thing too, it reminded me is that the work is never done, and I think that can be daunting for so many people. But one reason why we in our plans we have timelines and measurables, and some people reject the idea of having measurables because many people check the box. But for us, measurables are a way to get to a goal and achieve it, and maybe even celebrate the goal. But we don't think that's the end. We actually think of it, as my friend Marion Taylor Brown says, we think of it as a video game where you can always level up. And so even though we accomplish a certain goal, we're going to keep leveling up and keep leveling up and keep leveling up. So acts of love, having measurable plans, disaggregating so you're not trying to do all the things at the same time, because sometimes you actually can't accomplish anything. And then using the expertise of people that you're in community with to help you figure out how to deal with the plans.
Yes.
Pulled all that from LeadBoston.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much. And yes, I agree with everything you say, having gone through the LeadBoston program myself and meeting people that I would have otherwise never ran into, because we just don't operate in the same fields. So definitely get that. I'm glad. I am extremely grateful, as many of us are, that you were part of that cohort. And that acts of love that you just said, and I've heard you say that again, it's just like music, to my heart and my soul. Because when we're thinking about business, about grants, about securing funds, you don't really equate that in any way unless, you're somebody who really gets it deep down at the root, that it is an act of love. By doing the work that you're doing, you are bringing love to the work, to what comes out of that work. What is accomplished with that work and how it elevates and it touches, individuals' hearts.
Yeah, as I think about equity, diversity, inclusion, and oppression, all those things we're trying to dismantle, as I think about those as acts of love, one, it reminds me that this is about actions. Two, it does give me the warm and fuzzies.
Yeah.
Three, it disarms people that are against it, because who's going to not want to do something that's a loving gesture? And then four, it gives me permission to extend grace to those people that are having a difficult time with going there. Many of us have grown up in communities where we don't have to think about other people. We can be born and raised and married, schooled, and die without ever having to have a significant relationship with a person of color. And so now that we're being told that that's not okay, that can be difficult for a lot of people. And so thinking about it as acts of love gives me permission to give grace to those people. And so I can handle those situations where I'm in a room and really toxic things are happening, because I know that person is struggling with trying to get to a place where they're loving other people. It also gives me a chance to see opposition as an asset, as data, as a positive thing. That if I don't know what someone's opposing view is, how am I going to make the most informed, loving decision? And so acts of love helps me to remind myself that that person's opposing this thing because of their own personal life. So it's important that we engage and not step away from those conversations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like the person that most needs that act of love is usually not the person who's asking for it.
Right.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Wow. Oops. Did I hear? I'm sorry about that.
Sorry, that was totally me.
Okay, it's okay. Heather, no problem. All right. Thank you for that. That was I'm the kind of person that processes things, and you've said so much that I know that later on tonight, when everybody's asleep, I'm going to be, replaying these words in my head. You just have a way of articulating the truth, the humanity truth, that should be so simple, but still we have to work at it.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I hope you, when you're processing, you're still sleeping and processing with a lovely dream that makes you feel rested when you wake up.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Michael, what are some key lessons that you have learned in your journey to where you're at now, which is, there's a lot more to come, but to get you to this point, what key lessons, if any, have you learned?
Some of it's personal. There are a couple of mantras that I share with people I work with. One is people do business with people they know. Mm-hmm. And that helps me to get away from my desk and out into community. That helps me with my equity goals. It helps me with relationship building, with advancing an organization, with advancing a whole sector. People do business with people they know. And I think now in this digital age, we tend to have relationships via technology. And so that's something that has served me a lot. Second mantra is that no is the beginning of the conversation. I tend to not accept no, and maybe my experience in sales has gotten me to understand that sometimes the no is just not right now. Yes. And so I like no, and that also engages in that opposing conversation that I think is so important. Yes. I don't mind if someone's visceral reaction is no, but I want to know why you're saying yes, so we can get there. I think also, and this sort of really started in my 40s, that my classmates know that I have an insane self-care practice. Whole food plant-based diet, exercise, gratitude practices, mindfulness. When things get more tense or stressful or busy, I tend to double down on my self-care, and that keeps me really grounded and healthy. I've actually lost the anger emotion. It's weird. And one day it popped in my head that if if there is a solution to the problem, why get angry? If there's no solution to the problem, why get angry?
Yes.
So I kind of let that go. I was like, oh yeah, great, great. I can get passionate and I can be pointed and I can make firm comments, but it's not destroying my emotional state. And then the other thing I would say is live life. I mean, we're only here for a short amount of time, so enjoy each other, enjoy what the best parts of what life has to offer. And I think those things will take you for a long way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, everything you say, I agree with. I am really surprised, like you said, you lost that anger emotion. I can only imagine how much self-work, it takes to get to that point. Um, and also thank you for adding, that it's a combination of things. It's what you put into your body, into your mind. So it's all connected, the things we listen to, the things that we eat, how we navigate and walk in this world, those are all part of getting to that place of realizing that we're all doing the best we can.
I'm not going to pontificate like my fellow vegans do,
No.
but I agree with you about the things that people put in their bodies.
Yeah, no, I agree with you too. And I respect everybody else's decision, so I'm not saying you should only eat kale.
I hate kale. I don't like it.
Say, I love kale.
It feels more like a plant than a food. It's hard. And my friends are like, you have to massage it. I'm like, I don't want to massage.
You just want to eat it. Yes, absolutely.
See Shauna's face.
It only belongs in a smoothie.
Yeah, I kind of agree.
Or covered in garlic.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, that is very true. Thank you. Yeah, I forgot we had the expert here on that. All right. So, Michael, can you tell us a little bit, because I know a lot of us are curious about the social prescribing healthcare that you just announced a few months ago. Like where is that at now? And are people able to access it now? And a little bit about how it works.
Yeah, so social prescribing is an umbrella term. I think the term came out in the 70s. And basically it's sort of a formal, innovative way to talk about what healthcare providers have been doing for millennia. They have been doing community referrals for many, many years, where they'll say to their patient, you know what, you should go for a walk. Or why don't you go and do something that brings you joy? So social prescribing came about as a sort of a formal way for healthcare providers or people who work in the healthcare sector. So this could be social workers or counselors, to say to people, try these different things. Europe, especially the UK and Canada, have made major advances in social prescribing. So at Mass Cultural Council about 5 years ago, staff traveled to the UK to sort of learn a little bit more about social prescribing. Then they brought it to Massachusetts, and we wanted to beta test and pilot a program. So the basics of it is that we worked with the healthcare sector and arts organizations to train them to use arts prescribing, whereby a healthcare provider could prescribe an arts and culture activity for their patients to help with their most primarily mental health and social isolation issues, but other issues as well. Physical health can also be supported through arts prescribing. It is social innovation, and I would sort of put it up there with like seatbelts and school lunches and 911, the kind of thing that really could be zeitgeist changing. The other thing I will say is that the science has finally caught up with the theory that the arts were good for health, mental health, physical health. In the last 20 years, there have been so much scientific proof that has been out there, books and I mean, someone I met last night said they read 4,000 scholarly journals. So it's science. The arts can help people heal and feel better. And so given all that, Mass Cultural Council, about a year and a half ago, we decided that instead of us funding basically the reimbursements for healthcare providers prescribing arts and cultural activities to their patients, we would kind of put pressure on or try to build relationships with the healthcare sector, because in my mind, these are healthcare issues and healthcare should pay for healthcare issues. So we work with a partner, we're working with a group named Art Pharmacy that's created this cool product. And we're funding them to scale up arts prescribing in Massachusetts. So we've connected them with healthcare professionals and payers all over the state. They're building those relationships. But a month and a half ago, we announced our first major partnership. Mass General Brigham and their insurance company, United Health, are providing this program to some of their patients. Their patients particularly struggling with high blood pressure. The way it works is that a healthcare professional at Mass General Brigham can prescribe 12 doses of arts and culture to their patient. The patient then will get a call from their care navigator, who will do an intake meeting and find out the patient's demographics, where they live, their arts and cultural preferences. On the back end, we have 400 plus arts organizations that are acting as the pharmacy that have uploaded information into Art Pharmacy's system. The care navigator will then go back to the patient and say, here are a bunch of different activities we think would suit you. Then the patient gets to fill their prescription. They're done in sort of like 4 buckets. Even though you get 12 doses, you get 4 buckets. So you may want to try dance. After 4 buckets, the care navigator will say, how'd it go? The patient can say, I want to keep doing dance, or I want to switch over and do pottery. So then they have 4 doses of pottery. They come back and they can change. The prescription comes with a companion ticket. If we're dealing with mental health and social isolation issues, we don't want to send them to the opera by themselves. We want them to go with a person. And if needed, it'll cover transportation. And all of this is it's paid for by Art Pharmacy with funding from third-party payers. So at the moment, we have that partnership with Mass General Brigham and United Health. We are meeting and talking with every other healthcare system and payer in the state. I just got word that we have a couple more coming aboard. It will continue to scale as people start buying this and believing this. We're gonna partner with a couple of healthcare groups in the area to do a big convening with the healthcare sector in the fall to really sort of give them some data. The data that we're able to collect through Art Pharmacy system can show that people are filling their prescriptions at like 80% rate. The going rate for actually taking medication is 40%. They're talking about the fact they feel better. So there are all these tests on how people feel, and all that stuff is reported in the system. So we're actually able to show through data that people are actually using it and they're feeling better. And hopefully that will reduce healthcare costs, because if you feel better because of your experience with arts and culture, you may have less doctor visits, which would take some of the strain off of healthcare. And this is a slow build. This is just starting. The group we're using, Art Pharmacy, has done over 2,000 prescriptions because they're working all over the country. I don't know how many we've done here in Massachusetts, so hopefully that'll continue to scale as we get more healthcare systems and payers on board. We'll see more people getting this. I think this reminds me of the 80s when we discovered that physical health was good for your health. And we were all like, really? Oh, wow. And now 30 years later, it's just when you go to your doctor, they'll say, tell me about your sleeping habits, tell me about your eating habits, tell me about your physical fitness. What I'm hoping for in 10 to 15 years, they'll say, have you engaged in any arts activities? So it's going to get there. The big push is for healthcare to step up and start paying for these various other community referrals and assets that we have that can help with healthcare. We're all learning about social determinants of health.
Yes.
And the arts can be one of the tools to support that. So anyone that wants to know more information about it, happy to share, but this is big deal. And we're the first state to have funded by payers and using a system that already exists.
Yes.
So I'm hoping, I mean, every fourth email in my inbox is about this. And at least 3 times a month, I'm speaking on some panel all over the country about this program. So in fact, after this meeting, I have a meeting with the Presidential's Committee on Arts and Humanities to talk about it.
Yeah, this is amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I know you hear this probably all the time, but thank you. This is a historical time. I feel that what you're doing, I mean, it's historical. You are transforming, you know, healthcare in a way. You are transforming the way that we see the arts. Not that only see the arts, but also understand and acknowledge, you know, how important it is for us and for our world. And for, you were talking about the blood, for people who have high blood pressure. I mean, something that can be assessed, which is great for data, you know, to show then, you know, look what has happened. Look how these patients, you know, how their health has improved, how their blood pressure, you know, has improved, you know, because of this arts prescription. I think it's historic.
I hope it's a gateway to, I mean, I think that the next sort of phase for me is being able to allow social workers and school counselors to prescribe arts and culture for their people. I also, you know, we've heard from Veterans Affairs, we've heard from housing authorities, we've heard from the Gaming Commission on gambling addictions. I also think it's a gateway to healthcare through payers to fund, like Sean and I talked about, food prescriptions. I know there's a whole thing out there, but most of that funding comes from philanthropy. And I think, again, that's a healthcare issue, and healthcare should be paying for food prescriptions.
Yes.
So I think it's a gateway for housing prescriptions, financial literacy prescriptions, all these things I think could come out of this. I also was thinking when you were saying that the way arts can help in different sectors, I was having an email exchange with a city in Massachusetts that has an intersection where people are routinely getting hit by cars. I mean, the number of accidents is astronomical, and it's very expensive for them to put in a traffic light. It would be disruptive to the flow of traffic. And I sent them a bunch of articles and some research on traffic calming art, whereby artists, especially muralists, can paint on the street, and it's been scientifically shown to slow down traffic. So another way to beautify, that's where the aesthetic and the practical can come together and work with a different sector. So those are the things I'm dreaming of at Mass Cultural Council.
Yes. So there's a lot of potential, a lot of room to work on, which is really exciting. And I'm glad that you are there, you know, leading this and getting people, you know, raising awareness about this and spreading the news. So it's sort of like doing a mass reconstruction of the way we look at art and how we think about art.
Radical thinking. The status quo is something I do not accept.
Me neither. Me neither. All right. I said I want to be mindful of your time. It is exactly 12:45. So I want to ask if anybody has a question or a comment that they want to unmute themselves.
I see Libby in the room. We're thinking about housing too in the arts sector.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you. I think so at Mass Housing, we run a program where affordable housing sites can pay into a pool and then receive some benefits and programming as part of that. So a big piece of it is arts and culture and education and wellness programming. It's also dispute resolution, staff training. But it's interesting because when I first started, I've been there for almost 2 years. When I first started, HUD had just stopped endorsing our resident programming. And they felt, and it spoke to when you were saying how if you don't know what the why, the no. Someone had said to me, it's, you know, things like dancing and the puppet shows aren't really meeting the muster. And even some of the pressure we get is we want more education programs and more financing. these are things at people's homes, and it's homes where people might be, well, if it's elderly, people with disabilities, it may not be able to access, physically access arts, or in their community, or there's affordability barriers. So, but we were able to get it overturned. So just want to thank you for your continued like putting this information out and have data and facts and research, because we did some small things. We changed arts and entertainment to arts and culture. We talked about social determinants of health, but it's even just been interesting, I think, as a program, because of some of the reception it received. It was something, it was like, don't talk about it. We'll keep funding these programs and doing this, but let's kind of keep it quiet, where now we're really starting to shift around how do we promote this and talk about it. And we're actually meeting with some of your team members on Friday about the prescription stuff. So
oh, great. But
I do think there's more and more that we could and should be doing with, thinking about murals where people live, and how do we really, especially in some of our developments that might have more community violence and things, of how do we show love and do that through things like musical performances and sharing of cultures and murals and things. So
yeah, it's interesting, because public art is one of those things that in even in the most violent neighborhoods, people just don't mess with it. They don't mess with libraries, churches, and public art. And so if you want to mitigate violence in a community, let's talk about how we can put some art in those communities. So that work, and this is where like building relationships with other sectors will help me build coalitions and people to help endorse the work we're doing. And I have to get my sector to kind of get away from the rehearsal rooms and the desks, and also do their relationship building too. But anytime, Libby, something like that comes up and you need some people to support your efforts to overturn decisions, please let us know.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we also did post our call for presenters on your website this year. So even thinking about how do we, if there's performers and things that would be interested in doing, and different artists would be interested in doing things, I think the power of it's amazing. We've seen some pretty transform, some both individuals or groups really transform the culture or make big health improvements. So appreciate all that you're doing and putting out. Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you for including the arts.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Livy. And Heather said that was tech. She unmuted her microphone and she didn't realize it. Don't worry about it. I do that all the time. And they can hear me yelling at my kids. So, Michael, again, being mindful of your time, we are past time. I will say, that anybody that wants to follow up on conversations or learn more on how to support what Michael and the Mass Cultural Council is doing, please, I know I don't have to tell you, this is a very close-knit group. But I personally am looking forward to see how we at YW Boston and the work that we do, that we can also, adapt or incorporate some of this gold that that you are sharing, some of the love that you are putting into action. And I know we've talked about this before, so you know how these things work. So, but I am very interested in that. I want to thank you immensely, Michael, for your time. I'm sure that we will be talking a lot more about this. And I am looking forward to having everybody in a room together sometime in October. More to follow on that. Everyone have a great afternoon. Michael, any last words?
Just thank you so much. Thanks for elevating arts and culture in the YW space. I really appreciate it, Adriana. And it's so good to see all my friends. I miss you all.
Yes, everyone. All right, everyone, enjoy the rest of your day and the last days of summer.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. See you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Adriana.